A rabbit came into my practice a few years ago, a healthy young doe who had never had a sick day in her life after 2 days of not eating, completely fine the week before. The owner had started giving her a small handful of a popular yogurt treat every evening because the packaging showed a smiling rabbit and called it a healthy reward. Within days, her gut had slowed to a crawl, and a slowed rabbit gut is one of the genuine emergencies in this species. She survived, but only after 2 nights on fluids and a bill that dwarfed the cost of that treat bag 100 times over, and her owner spent both of those nights sitting in the clinic waiting room, badly shaken and completely unable to understand how a food marketed as a treat had put her rabbit in that position in the first place. Nobody sold that owner poison. They sold her something in a bag with a cartoon rabbit smiling on the front, sitting proudly in the same aisle as the actual appropriate food. That is the pattern behind almost everything on this list. Rabbits have one of the most specific digestive systems of any common pet, and the gap between what looks like a treat and what actually damages that system is enormous, and almost nobody explains it clearly before something goes wrong. My name is Finn. I have spent close to 2 decades treating rabbits and other small exotics, and I want to walk you through 13 things that end up in a rabbit's bowl far too often, why each one causes real harm, and what it actually costs when it goes wrong. Before the list itself, here is the thing that makes rabbits genuinely different from almost every other pet people keep, and it is worth understanding properly rather than just taking on faith. Their whole digestive system runs on a constant, steady flow of fiber through a very particular balance of gut bacteria. Interrupt that flow, even briefly, and the whole system can slow down or stop, which is what vets call gut stasis. It sounds mild, it is not. A rabbit that stops eating for even half a day is already in a genuine medical emergency, and most of the items on this list are dangerous precisely because they interrupt that flow in one way or another, whether through direct toxicity or through simply not being what that gut evolved to process. I also want to say plainly that almost nothing on this list looks dangerous. That is deliberate in a sense. Rabbits are prey animals that hide illness completely until they cannot anymore, and the foods that harm them are almost always things that look wholesome, get marketed as treats, or simply sit within reach during ordinary daily life. None of this requires carelessness, it requires information that rarely gets handed over clearly. A good rule of thumb that solves most of this before it starts is that the vast majority of a rabbit's bowl, roughly 80%, should be hay, with fresh greens making up most of the rest, and everything on the list below treated as a rare exception rather than a normal part of any week. Number 1. Iceberg lettuce and other pale, watery lettuces. It looks like exactly the kind of thing a rabbit should eat. In reality, it carries almost no nutrition and contains a compound called lacticarium that upsets a young rabbit's gut badly, often causing severe diarrhea within hours. In a rabbit under 6 months, that diarrhea alone can be fatal through dehydration before an owner even realizes how serious it has become. Stick to dark leafy greens like romaine, herbs, and leafy tops instead, which carry real nutrition and none of that risk. I see this one most often in owners who assume any lettuce counts as a safe rabbit food simply because it is a vegetable, without realizing that the pale, watery varieties are almost the opposite of what a rabbit's gut actually needs. Number 2. Avocado, every part of it. Flesh, skin, and pit all contain a compound called persin, and rabbits are extremely sensitive to it. It damages heart muscle and causes fluid to build around the lungs, and there is no safe quantity at all. This is one I ask every new rabbit owner about directly, because avocado toast has become such a common breakfast that a dropped piece on the floor is a real and common route of exposure. I have treated more than one free roaming rabbit for exactly this after a rushed weekday breakfast, and by the time symptoms show up as labored breathing, the damage is already well underway. Number 3. Chocolate and anything containing cocoa. The same theobromine that makes chocolate dangerous for dogs is dangerous here too, and rabbits are, if anything, more sensitive to it pound for pound. A rabbit that free roams a kitchen and finds a dropped square of chocolate is not being greedy. It is walking straight into a genuine toxin with no idea what it is. Baking chocolate and dark chocolate carry the highest concentration, which matters most around holidays when both are more likely to be sitting out on a counter within easy reach. Number 4. Onion, garlic, leek, and chives. The entire allium family damages red blood cells in rabbits the same way it does in cats and dogs, and it does not need to be a large amount. A rabbit that steals a chunk of onion from a salad prep board or gets a taste of garlic bread has taken in a genuine blood toxin, not simply something that disagrees with its stomach. Symptoms can take a day or two to appear, which means owners rarely connect the illness back to what their rabbit ate, and by the time it is obvious, the red blood cell damage is already well established. Number 5. Rhubarb leaves specifically. The stalks people cook with are generally considered safe in small amounts, but the leaves carry a concentrated dose of oxalic acid that causes real kidney damage. Anyone growing rhubarb in a garden a rabbit has access to needs to keep those leaves well out of reach, because a curious rabbit will absolutely sample them given the chance. This one comes up almost every spring in my clinic, right as rhubarb starts coming up in gardens and rabbits get more outdoor supervised time than they had over winter. Number 6. Potato plant greenery and any green-tinged potato skin. Actual potato flesh in small amounts is not the main concern here. The leaves, stems, and any green skin contain solanine, a genuine toxin that affects the nervous system. Most owners never think about the potato plant itself, only the vegetable, which is exactly why this one catches people who grow their own. A rabbit given supervised time near a vegetable patch will happily nibble the greenery long before it shows any interest in digging up the actual potato underneath. Number 7. Tomato leaves, stems, and unripe green tomatoes. Same toxin family as the potato plant, same reasoning. Ripe red tomato flesh in tiny amounts is generally tolerated, but the green parts of the plant carry a real risk, and a rabbit given supervised time in a vegetable garden will happily nibble both without knowing the difference. If you grow your own tomatoes, fence off the plants themselves rather than relying on a rabbit to somehow know which part is safe. Number 8. Bread, pasta, crackers, and other starchy human carbohydrates. These are not classic poisons, but they are genuinely dangerous in a different way. A rabbit's gut relies on constant fiber to keep everything moving, and starchy carbohydrates ferment in that gut instead, producing gas and slowing motility toward the same kind of gut stasis emergency I described at the start. A slice of toast handed over as a treat is one of the more common causes of a middle-of-the-night emergency call I get, and the delay between the toast and the visible symptoms is exactly why owners rarely make the connection themselves before they call. Number 9. Dairy of any kind. Rabbits lose the ability to digest lactose properly as they mature, the same as most adult cats, and dairy causes real digestive upset rather than the harmless treat it looks like. Cheese in particular gets offered constantly because rabbits will often eat it eagerly, which owners mistake for it being good for them. Eagerness is not the same as suitability, and a rabbit will happily eat plenty of things that its gut is genuinely not built to process. Number 10. Meat or any animal protein at all. Rabbits are obligate herbivores, and their entire gut microbiome is built around fiber fermentation, not protein digestion. Animal protein disrupts that balance and can trigger the same dangerous gut slowdown as starchy carbohydrates, just through a different mechanism. This one rarely happens on purpose, but a rabbit that free roams during a family meal can end up with an unintended taste of something it should never touch, usually from a plate left within reach for a moment longer than intended. Number 11. Seed and nut heavy treat mixes, including sunflower seeds. These are marketed constantly as a healthy addition, and rabbits love them, which is exactly the problem. They are extremely high in fat for an animal whose gut is built for constant low-fat fiber, and regular feeding disrupts the delicate fermentation happening in the cecum. Over months, this shows up as weight gain, reduced appetite for the fiber the rabbit actually needs, and a steady decline in gut health that owners rarely connect back to the treat bowl. Check the ingredient list on any mix before buying, and treat anything with seeds near the top of the list as an occasional handful rather than a daily staple. Number 12. Commercial yogurt drops and similar sugary rabbit treats. This is the one from the story I opened with, and it deserves its own entry because it is sold specifically as rabbit food, often with cheerful branding that implies it has been designed with the animal's health in mind. It has not. These are concentrated sugar and fat with almost nothing a rabbit's gut actually needs, and they are one of the most common preventable causes of gut stasis I see in clinic, precisely because nobody suspects the product marketed as a treat. Number 13. Apple seeds and any stone fruit pits. The flesh of apples, plums, peaches, and similar fruits is fine in small amounts. The seeds and pits contain compounds that release cyanide when broken down, and while a single seed is unlikely to cause a crisis, regular exposure adds up. Always core an apple fully and remove any pit before offering fruit as an occasional treat, and remember that fruit generally should be a small occasional addition rather than a regular part of the diet, given how much natural sugar it carries compared to what a rabbit's gut evolved to handle. Now, a few things worth doing tonight rather than just remembering for later. Walk through your kitchen and identify anything on this list that currently sits within reach of a rabbit that free roams, even briefly, during meal prep or meal times. Most incidents I see did not happen because an owner deliberately fed something dangerous. They happened because a rabbit found something dropped or reached something left on a low counter for a moment. Pay particular attention to countertop fruit bowls, compost caddies, and any bin without a secure lid, since all three are common, easily missed sources of exactly the foods on this list. Check whatever treat products are currently in your cupboard and actually read the ingredient list rather than trusting the picture on the front. If sugar, yogurt coating, or seed mixes are anywhere near the top of that list, that product belongs in the bin regardless of what animal is pictured on the packaging. And if your rabbit stops eating for more than 12 hours, for any reason, treat that as an emergency rather than a wait-and-see situation. Rabbit gut stasis moves fast, and the single biggest factor in a good outcome is how quickly it gets treated, not how it started. A simple daily habit catches most of this before it ever becomes a real problem. Every morning, before anything else, glance at the food bowl from the night before and check it is actually empty, and glance at the litter tray for normal droppings. A rabbit eating and passing droppings normally is a rabbit whose gut is working properly, and that 30-second check tells you more about ongoing health than almost anything else you could do day to day. The moment either of those looks different from usual is the moment to start paying closer attention, not several days later once it has become obvious. It is also worth building a genuinely safe treat list rather than relying on memory under pressure, especially in a busy household where more than one person feeds the rabbit and nobody has time to double-check every offering against a mental list. Small amounts of herbs like basil, mint, and parsley, a thin slice of carrot, or a piece of banana are all reasonable occasional treats that carry none of the risk on this list. Keeping a short, boring, reliable list like that on the fridge removes the temptation to reach for whatever is already open on the counter, and it means anyone in the house, not just the primary caregiver, can offer a treat with confidence rather than guessing. I want to be clear about something before I finish. None of the owners I have treated for this were careless. Every single one of them believed they were doing something kind, sharing food, offering a treat, letting a rabbit explore a kitchen they trusted. The gap here is not love. It is information that rarely gets handed over at the point of sale because a shop's job ends the moment you pay, and a rabbit's actual dietary needs start well after that. What I have noticed over 2 decades is that the owners whose rabbits stay healthiest long-term are rarely the ones who did anything dramatic. They are the ones who quietly built a handful of small, boring habits early on and stuck with them for years without needing to think about it. A safe treat list on the fridge? A quick morning check of the bowl and tray. Fencing rather than trust around a vegetable patch. None of it is exciting, and all of it works year after year without a single emergency visit. The rabbits I worry about are never the ones whose owners ask too many questions. They are the ones whose owners assumed common sense would be enough, because common sense built around what is safe for us tells you almost nothing reliable about what is safe for an animal with a completely different gut. That gap is not a character flaw. It is simply a gap in information, and closing it is the entire purpose of a video like this one. I have put together a full written guide covering everything safe and unsafe in far more depth than I can fit here, along with a proper feeding routine built around hay, fresh greens, and controlled portions rather than guesswork. It walks through exactly how much of each safe food to offer, how to introduce anything new gradually rather than all at once, and what a genuinely balanced weekly rotation actually looks like in practice. It is linked below, and it exists because 5 minutes in an appointment is never enough time to cover all of this properly before you are already back home with your rabbit. If you take one thing from this video, it is this. Check what is within reach before you start cooking, not after something goes missing from the counter. Do that walk through tonight before bed while the list is still fresh in your mind, and make it a habit rather than a one-time check.